Okay, fellas, let's get it on. Okay, fellas, let's get it on.
For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, let's get ready to rumble!
This is that mere hardcore man store on Boxing Beats and Rhymes YouTube channel. Tune in because this is the place to be, man, all the time.
Okay, fellas, let's get it on.
Boom, bags, wake up, I set it all bright. Look around and turn your wet to your bright night.
This is Tony Thompson, chilling with Boxing Beats and Rhymes.
Now, folks, if you'll just gather around a little closer now. Come right in a little closer. That's it. That's fine, folks.
Is this just a progression of human beings getting bigger and bigger? Or a cynical ploy by the sanctioning bodies to collect more sanctioning fees? The WBA have now followed suit behind the WBC's Bridgerweight division, and they are announcing they are going to have a WBA Super Cruiserweight division. I feel like I jinxed this into play the other day when I said, yeah, I can possibly see another one of the sanctioning bodies following suit, and they have done. An executive committee approved the creation of the Super Cruiserweight division in a vote called by the president, Gilberto Jesus Mendoza. Now, Oscar Rivas won the inaugural WBC crown in October 2021. He was unable to make a defense because of injuries and cancellations. Lucas Rozansky from Poland, he won the vacant belt from Alen Bbboc. So that's only 2 fights in 2 years for that belt. And they're saying the WBA could run into similar problems in the initial stages of getting the division together. Now, this this section of the weekly is becoming a bit of a tongue twister because I'm flipping between cruiserweight, bridgerweight, super cruiserweight, and heavyweight. And bridgerweight starts at 191 to 224. Super cruiserweight with the WBA starts at 201 to 224. So they're 2 separate weight classes. They're not the same weight class. So effectively, we have 19 weight classes in boxing now. I mean, at least simplify it. It's not like the WBA are not aware there is a bridgerweight division about. At least make it the same weight limit as the bridgerweight division. You can still call it super cruiser, but make it 191, 224 like they have, or come to a compromise with them. You've made a separate weight class. So now there's 19 weight classes. 19. Now I guess they could come to an arrangement to make some catch weight if they wanted to do a unification between bridgerweight and super cruiserweight. But why not make it the same weight limit? So there's a bit of uniformity there. What, there's no circumstance that the sanctioning bodies can work together and simplify things for us? There's no circumstances at all. The cruiserweights started 1979 at 190. The WBC brought it up to 200 pounds around 2004. The other sanctioning bodies followed suit around 2005, 2006. But, you know, at least the WBA, when they made a cruiserweight division after the WBC, they made it at 190 like the WBC, and so did the IBF and WBO. But today's boxing is just all over the place. Trust the WBA to make the weight limit different from the WBC. Anything above 175 is a cruiserweight. So a boxer who's drifting around at 191 is a cruiser. Who gets to decide if he's ranked at bridgerweight or heavyweight? Can the boxer decide, or does the sanctioning body decide? If you're a super cruiserweight, floating around anywhere between 201 and 224, who decides where you're ranked? Because you can either be a heavyweight or a super cruiserweight. Who decides? I wouldn't mind if the boxers, if there were boxers coming out saying these 6'6", 6'7" heavyweights are just too big and too heavy for us 6'2", 6'3" range heavyweights. If they were saying that, then you'd have a case to make these extra 2 weight classes. Now, despite them saying they made several analyses, that's how they worded it, before thinking about the request, and in the end it was submitted to a vote. Who was this analysis made with? Promoters, boxers, or between themselves? You have to ask Robert Smith, will we get a British super cruiserweight division? A British Bridgerweight division, is that on the way? What are the prime years for a Tyson Fury? Was it 2015 when he annexed them 3 titles from Vladimir Klitschko? Some people would argue that was chemically enabled, nandrolone. They've been showing pictures of the lean physique he had weeks before he fought Vlad. And what I've noticed 2023 is there could be a bit of an overreaction. Fury's on the decline. Gill Zhang says his mind is no longer on boxing. Fears he could have a big problem heading into the historic undisputed heavyweight title clash with Alexander Usyk. Sometimes I wonder if people get carried away with the psychiatric or psychological analysis, even myself sometimes. Now, decline is not an unreasonable argument. He is 35, he's not 27 like when he took them 3 titles from Vlad. And he hasn't always lived the life of the ultimate athlete. Zhang says it's simple. Fury didn't train for the Ngannou fight. He said, to be honest, he is not the version we are used to seeing. He said, I can see in his mindset, he's not in boxing at the moment. He's doing commercial things, he's doing PR, marketing, different things, but not boxing. And in this business, you really can't fool yourself. You can't fool training. In all truth, how does Zhang know how hard Fury trained for the Ngannou fight? How much does Zhang know about Fury's training camps for the Chisora fight, for the White fight, for the 3rd Wilder fight? He doesn't know. He's just guessing. And that's what a lot of people are doing, and I do it too. But that's guesswork. That's all guesswork. He's so sure that he didn't train. But Fury said he did train. Fury came out and said, I'm not going to make the same mistake Anthony Joshua did against Andy Ruiz and overlook an opponent he's supposed to beat. So speculation is good, but it's not empirical evidence by no means. And while what I said there is pretty obvious, you say, well, Beats, what you're saying is obvious. Yeah, it's obvious. But a lot of people buy into the speculation like it is fact. Zhang, he wants to fight the winner out of Fury and Usyk, but he said he'd prefer Fury. He wants to fight Fury. And I believe that's because he's slower than Usyk. Or perhaps he views the Fury fight as a bigger commercial fight. Zhang is not going to get that fight. Fury has already said if he wins that fight against Usyk, he will vacate all them titles. And if he's vacated the titles, then I don't know what the contract is saying. Can they hold him to that second fight with Usyk? I don't know. He'll be looking at that Ngannou fight though. I believe that's unfinished business in Tyson Fury's mind, and it's still troubling him. Now that's me speculating.
Everybody, first and foremost, I want to give thanks to the Most High, Jesus Christ. I also want to invite the Holy Spirit into this press conference. Just always want to invite him. Man, a couple things that I want to touch. You know, one thing that's been on my heart is the statements that Bernard made, where he'll decide if I'm going to finish or if I should continue boxing after this fight. He don't decide that. My coach does. My team does. Everybody that, you know, grinds with me day in and day out, that's who decides. And ultimately, God decides, not him. Nobody was telling him when to stop boxing. You know, he stopped boxing at, 45, so kudos to him. But he don't determine that. And another thing I want to touch on is, you know, Oscar saying that, you know, we misinterpret, you know, what they say. It's plain English. I didn't hear anybody speaking any language I don't know. So, you know, it's very clear to me that, you know, they're backing this guy to beat me just like they thought Duno was going to beat me. He was the next Filipino star. They saying he's the next Mexican star.
Any grievances Ryan Garcia had with Bernard Hopkins or Oscar De La Hoya, he could have got hold of them easy. He has all their contact details. But instead, we get this emotional rant. And what's up with boxers these days? I heard Jairo Pataya the other day talking about Eddie wanted Jordan Thompson to win. He didn't want him to win. Billy Joe Saunders was saying Eddie wanted Canelo to beat him. Tank Davis was convinced that his promoters wanted Rolly to beat him. Regis saying that Eddie wants Haney to win. He said that a few weeks back, and he said it again today. And Ryan's saying that they wanted Duno, the Filipino, who he knocked out. GOLDENBOY wanted Duno to beat him. And he's saying that they want Duarte to beat him as well and build him as the next Mexican star. You got to control the show as a boxer. You got to control the show. That's what you have to do, in my opinion. You got to come out all business. If you're going to smack talk on anyone, the only person that smack talk should be directed at is Duarte. It's assumed he'll overcome Duarte, but note this down for further reference in future fights, how Ryan's concentration is not where it should be. You know, what I found interesting was Bernard was saying Ryan doesn't think they respect him and treat him like a champ, and Bernard says, you seen he built? He's not a champ. And how long have we been saying that? When he beat Luke Campbell in the Eliminator, he was putting a crown on his head. You're not a king of anything. He calls himself King Rai. Golden Boy's toxic though, man. It really is. Like, Oscar took that lawsuit on Al Heyman. So did Bob Arum, to be honest. Then there was the racist emails. Look how it ended with Canelo and Oscar. And all of a sudden, Bernard Hopkins is injected into it all. What's going on over there? Like, it was like the weirdest thing. Why ain't they keeping it professional? How much fights has Ryan got left on his contract? Why don't he just keep his head down until his contract runs out and then he can do his own thing? He's still young. Why are they all out in public, airing everything out? I guess they can't let him go because he's the biggest star there and he's never won a world title. In all truth, it wouldn't surprise me if they wanted Duarte to win and then take the shine from this win to build his profile. They're probably looking at it like Duarte would be a lot easier to promote and manage than Ryan. In saying that, Oscar don't seem like someone who is easy to work with. Anyway, I'm looking forward to the fight. It should be good while it lasts. Good Golden Boy card. Golden Boy cards are underrated. They are underrated. I am interested in Jordan Gill versus Michael Conlan. You know, Bernard Hopkins said they're not in the business of kissing any fighter's ass. That was what Golden Boy said. And although he's saying that, if they had a prized commodity with a title belt who handled themselves at press conferences a little better than Ryan Garcia, I'm not saying they'd kiss his ass, but they'd definitely be more accommodating to his angst, wants and needs. And, you know, I was hearing Eddie Hearn very ruthlessly breaking down the card, saying if Conlan loses, he might as well quit. If Jordan Gill loses, he might as well quit. If this guy loses, he might as well quit. Calling a Jagbo, Troy Williamson. Very ruthless. Very ruthless. And while that's not true, because let's say someone from the main event, Conlan and Gill, loses a controversial split decision, should they quit? Of course they shouldn't. And Eddie was just talking in a moment. Michael Conlan was a top prospect on Top Rank for years, and he finds himself now in Matchroom, trying to get himself back in the game. 2 bad knockout defeats in his last 4, and Jordan was stopped last time out by Kiko Martinez for the European title early. Now Jordan Gill doesn't have a big knockout percentage or nothing like that, although his win for the Commonwealth title looked like it was inspired by divine intervention at times. He got up off the floor from a knockdown in the 7th, then there was one move that looked like a DTT. He landed on his head from a move that looked like a DTT from WWE. But he got back up and found a knockout punch. Jordan's been on Matchroom on and off for a little while. And if Jordan can take him into the trench, who knows what he could achieve. He could save his career and perhaps end Michael Conlan's.
Eddie was doing interviews suggesting that he wanted to see fighters take a bit more of a difficult fight, difficult step up. People somewhat linked your name to that and why the Troy fight hadn't happened previously. What did you make of any of those comments back then?
People say what they want. Let me put it straight right now. The Troy Williamson fight was never ever turned down. The facts are, we wanted one more fight because I didn't perform well in Dublin, coming off an injury, picked another injury up, and then Troy Williams towards the end of the year. So we wanted one in September, and then we'll fight Troy end of the year, start of next year. That was the plan. That's not turning down a fight.
It is technically turning down a fight. You're saying you're fit enough to fight, but you want a training fight. People are turning up to watch fights, competitive fights. And eventually people are going to pull up Eddie with inconsistencies on this. Well, how come you're not pushing someone so harder to take harder fights? AGYARKO from Belfast is now 13-0, aka Black Thunder, with 17 inside the distance, 27 years of age. Troy Williamson, the last time I saw him, he looked absolutely, let's say, not his best against Josh Kelly. Didn't look good at all. He's came back with 1 win since. 20 wins, 14 inside the distance, 1 loss, 1 draw. 32 years of age, 5'11". The first thing I noticed is how much more powerful he looked than Coleman AGYARKO. Williamson, he's fought on Queensbury, Matchroom, Wasserman, back to Matchroom. They both need a big win. They both need a big win. Troy will be looking to re-establish his name after that horrible performance against Josh Kelly. The domestic scene was buzzing about Troy after that Ted Cheeseman victory, which was, a great fight. I don't think Cheeseman's fought since. Over 2 years ago. The zone with 2 solid cards, 1 in Europe, and then later we head off to Houston to watch Ryan Garcia Duarte. They're talking about Devin Haney fighting Barrios and Keith Thurman. Why does everybody think they can beat up Keith Thurman? Everybody calling out Keith Thurman, Conor Ben, apparently Devin Haney, Clarissa Shields. Everybody wants to have a go at Keith, bruh. Lord of mercy. Reminds me of the Tone bike back in the day. No, not really. Hey, look, man. Devin's gave up all his 135-pound straps. But looking at the size of him, he's not going to be at 140 for too long either. You know what I mean? And MIKAELA Mayor, who was a 5'9" super featherweight, extremely tall. She's now moved up to 147, 18 pounds heavier than what she weighed in for the Alicia Baumgardner fight last year. Now, she's fighting Tasha Jonas in January next year for Tasha's 147-pound title. And I'm wondering, has MIKAELA moved up for legacy, or is she just enjoying food? You know what I mean? Because she must have been emaciating herself, a 5'9" young woman fighting at super featherweight. And trust me, women on diets, not the most pleasant thing to be around. You know, she's there with full English breakfast. I mean, what is that? I guess you can have it with scrambled egg, but you normally have it with egg sunny side up, you know what I mean? That's how they normally have it. There's no black pudding there. I don't eat black pudding. I don't even know what it tastes like. I don't touch the black pudding, right? But it doesn't look that impressive. You know what I mean? There's bread there. It's supposed to be buttered toast, right? And I've never seen cucumber on a full English breakfast and fruit salad. That's the worst full English ever. Worst full English. The roast dinner, the turkey, it looks dry. Look like it needs some biscuit gravy. Potatoes, some of them look like they ain't cooked properly. Some of them look like they're burnt. Where's the Yorkshire pudding? Nah, I don't know where she's going to get that food there. Boy, Benavidez and Andrade did 60K. Yeah, Andrade's just not a draw, is he? Benavidez is just not a draw.
Many of these pay-per-view fights, like the one last Saturday,
Benavidez
did less than 100,000.
Did it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So that's 2 pay-per-views on the bounce for Benavidez. Flop, flop. 26 years of age. He really needs that Canelo fight. He really needs it. More than Canelo needs it. Throw the boy a bone, Canelo. Throw the boy a bone. David will not want to hear what I've got to say. David has an inflated view of his market value. So they're having to go to pay-per-view to try and accommodate that inflated view. But David and his current model of boxing is not sustainable. And that's why the TV networks in America are running from boxing. They're running from it. And the next network, I believe, is not going to go for these situations where the Mexican monster thinks he's worth this, but his pay-per-views only sell that. They're not going to go for that. They're going to have to go to competitive matchmaking with prospects and fighters who are up for it and hungry. Pay-per-view not required. They're going to have to go to that. A Tuesday fights model, Friday fights model. How many pay-per-views have the PBC produced with numbers like this? How many?
Many money. Say many.
They can't bring that into the Amazon Prime situation. Surely not. Or I'm just a hater? Or is it true? You know, Andrade has an inflated value of worth as well. You had 2 fighters with inflated value of worth, and the fight had to go pay-per-view, and it's not doing the numbers. If this fight was just standard subscription, no pay-per-view, and it done a viewership of 800, 900,000, that That's what would have sustained boxing in America. They wouldn't have been running away from the sport like that. But because the boxers want so much, even though their market value doesn't dictate that, this is why I'm having this monologue right now. This is why. There's no way that fight should have been pay-per-view on the strength of David's last numbers. And Andrade, 35 inactive, some say boring. This had all ingredients to be the flop that it was. You know, if you live across there, correct me when I need to be corrected. It's not a problem. But let's say, for instance, you like American football, and whatever network you watch, you pay a subscription for, and you don't have to pay no pay-per-view for none of the games for the season. How can boxing compete with that? NFL is a much bigger franchise than the PBC, but yet you're going to put PBC fights on pay-per-view with Demetrius Andrade. Do people in America know Demetrius Andrade like the most popular American footballers? Is the question. Or David Benavidez, for that matter.
You better get lost or get grilled.
Unless David Benavidez beats up Beterbiev and Bivol, he can't get his pay-per-view numbers up right now. He needs Canelo like Canelo needed Floyd, like Floyd needed Oscar. But if he was to lose, he would be effectively passing the torch. Please do not get this mistaken in what I'm saying. Canelo himself is struggling to do 1 million pay-per-view buys unless he fights the likes of Beterbiev, Bivol, or at 168, Benavidez. Benavidez needs to fight more, I would say, but Canelo still needs it, nonetheless.
First of all, Eddie, on TalkSport, Robert Smith said an application for Conor Benn's license was rejected. What's the situation there going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's lovely to hear it on TalkSport, to hear a full explanation. I mean, a lot of what he said was completely untrue, and that will be dealt with today by Conor's legal team, and you'll be hearing from the board soon on that. To say that he hasn't gone through the appropriate channels is the biggest load of rubbish I've ever heard in my life.
I mean, it doesn't really look neutral for the British Boxing Board of Control to run to Simon Jordan all the time, knowing that Simon Jordan and Eddie have a somewhat fractured relationship, but he keeps running to Simon Jordan with information about Conor Benn's case before he speaks to Conor Benn or Eddie Hearn. You know, look, Conor should have never threatened to take the board to court. Now he's actually going to have to take the board to court for allegedly misrepresenting Conor, saying that he hasn't tried to clear up the situation. They're putting all the liability on Conor. Now, if it goes to a lawsuit, why are the British Boxing Board of Control so happy about that? From what I've always heard, they don't have much money. Are they being financially incentivized to go against Matchroom and Eddie Hearn? Because all of a sudden they got money. They paid an out-of-court settlement just the other day to Ian John Lewis, the referee. Conor shouldn't have came on social media talking about he's giving a dossier to the WBC before the board. So he's kind of embarrassed them, and they're acting like arseholes as well. Conor acting like a total arsehole as well. What keeps coming up from the media and people following the case is Conor needs to clear himself. What people need to do is step back for a second, and I'm going to speak very slowly. How do you clear yourself with the agency that passed you? Didn't he clear himself with the agency that failed him? I believe a lot of people who have followed the case have a lot of the words what TalkSport say planted in their heads. When you say clear yourself, do you mean prove that he didn't take the substance? Conor's such an idiot. The WBC cleared him in their eyes to fight. And he even had a go at them for saying it's not X. He's saying he's clean. He didn't have nothing in his system. No one's arguing that he had the clomiphene in his system. It's how it got there and the intent. Same with Tyson Fury. He came to a compromise with UCAD, took liability. He had the nandrolone, but he said he didn't know how it got there. Possible explanations, the wild boar. When you say clear yourself, do you mean prove that you didn't take anything? That's not how life goes. This is not how life works. That's not the real world. Strict liability is strict liability. This is all about now a resolution to get back in the ring. Conor can scream till he's blue in the face that he didn't take anything. The VADA test suggests, on the basis of strict liability, whether it's contaminated eggs, he had the substance in his system. When you say clear, what do you mean? I don't get that at all. I've never said Conor Benn was innocent. I've never said that. So how long should he stay out the ring then? It was way over a year from June, I believe, last year until October this year, when he was able to get in the ring and do his thing again. So how long should he be out? What, till he's 40? Because if you're saying that, all other boxers would have to get a total ban as well. Because to me, it sounds like some people want a total ban or 4 or 5 year ban. Which, if it's the case, you're going to have to be consistent when the fighters you don't dislike so much test positive. Now, forget that for a minute, yeah? Now, I don't know what the board are playing at. Like I'm saying, like, looks like they're baiting Conlan to make this lawsuit. Eddie Hearn, I think he's picking a fight too. And I'm not going to go too far into it. I've got a crazy conspiracy theory in my head, but I'm not going to go too far into it. All I know is Eddie said he wants to make his own testing agency, his own testing facility for matchroom fighters. He already uses 2 layers every card. Conlan versus Gill tomorrow. That's not a world title fight. 2 layers of testing. So he's already throwing down the gauntlet to the board and other promoters. He's always said he wants to replicate what Dana's doing at the UFC, which would mean having control of licensing fights in the UK without the board. I ain't gonna say no more. I wonder if people know that Matchroom are worth a fortune. And so are DAZN. And there's a lot of influential people who might be willing to back Eddie. I believe this case is going to change a lot of things in British boxing. Remember where you heard it first. Stay tuned.
Okay, fellas, let's get it on. Okay, fellas, let's get it on.
For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, let's get ready to rumble!
This is that mere hardcore mentor on Boxing Beats and Rhymes YouTube channel. Tune in because this is the place to be, man, all the time.
Okay, fellas, let's get it on.
Boom, bags, wake up, I set it all bright. Look around and turn your wet to your bright night.
This is Tony Thompson, chilling with Boxing Beats and Rhymes.